Welcome to Security Nation, an ESA podcast that brings you the voice of electronic security and life safety. We bring on security pros to discuss the latest industry happenings, new technology, and best practices, telling your story to become the ever-present voice in an ever-changing industry. I'd like to introduce this episode's guest. We have Paul Hevesy, who is a speaker, coach, and author, and additionally the chairman for Foundation for Advancing Security Talent, FAST. And we'll get a little bit more into what FAST is and how it serves the industry. But first, I'd like to thank you, Paul, for joining us on the podcast today.
Hannah, thanks for inviting me. I'm just honored to be here. This is awesome. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm really excited. I've worked on different FAST-related programs and stuff, but this is my first time actually meeting you, and so I'm excited to hear a little bit of your goals and vision for FAST. But start right off, maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit maybe about your story and how you got involved in the industry in the first place.
Yeah, I love that. And don't worry, you don't have to call me Chairman Hevesy.
Oh, okay. I appreciate it.
We're good. Yeah, so, Hannah, I've spent a lot of time in the security industry, which is, ultimately my connection here to ESA and to FAST. I've spent up until this August of 2022, spent almost 21 years with a company called Stanley Black & Decker, and most of that time with our security business. For the real veterans of the industry, I actually started with a company called Best Access Systems here, headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. I actually live in Fishers, Indiana, and have for the last 12 years or so, mainly because of that connection ultimately to Best. And then as that got folded into or acquired by Stanley Black & Decker in the early 2000s, all kinds of things happened in there, all kinds of changes, all kinds of opportunities for me across sales, sales leadership, operations leadership, even some human resources in there. And so great experiences, wonderful career, no regrets working for a great company like Stanley Black & Decker. But that ended, like I mentioned, earlier this year. And so now I'm just, I'm trying to figure out exactly what's next. I will talk about it, but I was able to get my first book published this year. So the job I had with Stanley Black & Decker after almost 21 years ended on August 2nd. And my first book launched on August 3rd, the very next day. So
wow.
Things happen for all kinds of reasons, most of which we're unaware, at least at the time. And so, so as you mentioned, I spend a lot of my time now doing some speaking. I love to MC. In fact, I just MC'd the Security Industry Association Honors Night in New York City.
Nice.
Had a great time. Shout out to Don Erickson and that crew for putting on a really terrific event. And yes, continue to do some coaching. I'm actually doing some consulting here locally with some businesses. So I'm staying busy.
Oh, yeah, sounds like it. Jeez.
Yeah.
So you came out with a book. I actually have some questions about that.
Yes.
So what was your process for putting that out? Is it fiction, nonfiction? Is this
Wonderful.
your first book? I don't know if you already mentioned that.
Yeah, no, first book.
Okay.
It's a fiction book.
Wow.
And in case anyone's wondering, what does a security leader have to do with writing a fiction book? I don't know. But I had this idea. And for those listening that have an idea, I want to encourage you with something. So I had this idea about 5 years ago, Hannah.
Okay.
And I told myself, hey, that's a really cool idea, but I don't know how to write a fiction book. I've never written a fiction book. Who would edit this book? How would I get it published? All those obstacles that you put in your mind. And so I didn't do anything with it. I just, put it in the back of my mind. Well, then about late 2019, early 2020, and I believe this is a God thing. God sent these people into my life. He put 3 people in my life and they're all people I know, but they were all in a 30-day period, and they all asked me or said something to the effect of, really out of the blue, you should write a book.
Wow.
And I said, first person said that, I said, you know what, I got this idea. Oh, yeah, it's a great idea. You should do it. I'm like, oh, okay. Second person, like a week later, hey, you should write a book. I said, I got this idea. What do you think? Absolutely, you should do it. Third person says, hey, you should write a book. I'm like, okay.
It's happening.
I get it. I'll get it. It's happening. I'll do it. And so I didn't know what I was doing. For those of you who think I know what I'm doing. Now, I do like to write. I've got a speech communication undergrad degree. I like to write. I like the written word. I like the spoken word. that kind of thing. But I've never written anything like this before.
Right.
So I sat down and I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give myself 30 minutes a day, and it might last a week, maybe 2, but I can't see it lasting beyond that. A year later, I got a real book. Then all
That's
the things
amazing.
then all the things start creeping in. Who's going to edit it? How am I going to get it published? All that kind of stuff. And I actually stopped for a couple weeks, and then again told myself, dude, you've come this far. Seriously, you're not going to finish this. So I finished it, and I sent it to 2 publishers. Okay, here's
nice. There it is.
Operation Redemption, and I'll tell you about it in just a second. But I sent it to 2 publishers, the manuscript to 2 publishers. Within 24 hours, one of them responded and said, "Hey, we're interested." So all the things that I was worried about in a moment, I didn't have to worry about anymore. So, like I said, it got published earlier this year. It's a story. It's actually perfect, depending on when this particular podcast, posts. If it is before Christmas time, this story actually ends in an epic battle on Christmas night.
Oh, so that's great.
It's actually a story about 4 warrior angels sent to the earthly realm on a mission to save the world. And so this first book ends on, as I mentioned, an epic battle Christmas night. And I'm already working on the second one, because if you get one down, you might as well get 2.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds epic, honestly. I'll have to check it out. I mean,
Yeah.
always a good move to loop it into Christmas somehow. I mean,
Yeah.
I always say that Die Hard is my favorite Christmas movie. Everyone loves action on Christmas.
Love it. Yeah, for sure. I love that, Hannah. Yeah, thank you. And just a shameless plug, since we're talking about it.
Yeah.
You can go to my website, paulhevesy.com, paulhevesy.com/author. And that's where that'll take you to Amazon, where you can buy it directly on Amazon. Or if you want a signed copy from me, you can get it there too.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, I was just going to ask, where can people find it if they're interested? That sounds cool. And yeah, perfect season. Christmas right around the corner. Do you plan on writing another book, a sequel, or anything like that? Or?
Yep, sequel is on the way, and it's going to be a little bit different than this one, but the same storyline, just continuing on. And I don't want to give too much away, but it will involve angels and demons, just as this one does, and the battle over good and evil and those kinds of things. So. But it'll be a great continuation, and it's funny, Hannah. I've started, because I spent so much of my career in sales and leadership positions. I thought, man, I've started probably 3 or 4 sales or management or leadership or coaching books, and after about 2 chapters, I kind of said everything I wanted to say that hadn't already been said, and I'm like, and so I stopped. So this is a really great accomplishment for me to okay, I finally was able to finish. Something that I started. So encouragement to all of you listening. You can do it. Apply yourself. The secret to success was saying, okay, every day. Did I do it every day? No, but I was very consistent. 30 minutes a day. You can accomplish a lot if you're consistent. Whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
No, that's great. I mean, I definitely need to hear that. There's a few creative projects that I've been talking about probably for over 2 years at this point. And I keep finding excuses. At the end of the day, they are excuses. You think that they're reasons, but with some perspective, you realize it's just your way. You're trying to wiggle your way out of something that you should be doing. And so I will definitely try and follow in your footsteps and get a move on some of the things that I'm wanting to do.
I love it. I love it. Awesome.
So I guess one thing that I was thinking, as you were discussing, this process of writing this book while you were involved in the security industry, do you feel like when you actually decided to make the decision of writing 30 minutes a day and putting, this goal that you had into practice, do you think it helped you not only in your personal goals, but do you see how maybe that discipline helped you in your career at all?
Yeah, yes. And anytime you take on something like this that's kind of technically outside of work, it teaches you about yourself, in a lot of ways. You have to really stay focused. And I used it for me. The last couple of years have been, more than nutty. in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And, sticking me at home, a guy like me at home, in my home office, not for a week or 2 weeks, but for, extended period of time, I'm going to find stuff to do. So what it helped me actually with is it helped me be more effective at my day job, because I actually found myself, this was an outlet for me.
Right.
A lot of people say, well, working from home, my computer's on all the time. I didn't have that problem necessarily, but I learned early on that I needed something else to occupy my mind in the off hours, so that the only time I was in front of a computer wasn't just work. So this gave me a really cool outlet that actually allowed me to balance a little bit more, not go crazy, and put my energy into something. And that actually positively impacted my work, because if I didn't have that, it would have been really tough for me to continue to stay focused at work, working from home like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. In my personal experience, I have to, especially in the winter when I'm in Utah, so it's freezing during the winter, and winter feels like it lasts half the year. At least it feels that way.
Yeah.
I need to find some kind of extracurricular activity or some kind of project, or else I will begin resenting things that I do like, but you resent it because you don't have anything that's bringing you life or joy.
Yes.
It's funny how that works. How you begin resenting things if you're only stuck. The only thing that you're doing is like your job or your trade. You can burn yourself out if you're not also, I think, stretching yourself and investing your time and energy in other things that you enjoy.
We're capable of so much. I mean, I firmly believe God has given us incredible capacity, but just as you said, we have a way of limiting ourselves.
Right.
For whatever reason, there's 100 different, we talked about before we hit record here, maybe it's a survival meximechanism or something, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But breaking through that, or finding ways to break through that, like you said, and just like, okay, I'm just going to do it. Mm-hmm. It unlocks some things that maybe before were dormant. And for me, that's exactly what happened. It brought me joy. I can't think of one thing I share with people all the time. There wasn't a time I sat down and didn't have something to write. Mm-hmm. Which was so, it's just bizarre, because all I had was an idea. I had this idea for a special forces team of warrior angels sent to the earthly realm to protect the most important baby born in all of human history. That was the idea. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So how does that go from that idea to, this? Well, I credit to God. He gave me the idea and blessed me with it. And part of that was just saying, okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm just going to commit to it.
Right.
And good things happen when you do that, I would say.
Oh yeah, 100%. And you can kind of tell you're going down the right path if you're getting joy out of it, I think.
Yes. Yes, that's great.
Yeah, that's a good signal if you're doing something you should be doing.
Great call. Exactly right. Yeah. I never once didn't want to do it, right? I never went, oh man, I got to go do this book. It's like, I get to go write, So,
yep.
It's great.
No, I love that. That's great. So thank you for sharing a bit about your book. I do feel like I need to jump into a little bit about FAST stuff so we don't run out of time. So, Chairman of FAST.
Yes.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what FAST is and maybe what your vision for it is as its chairman?
Yeah, absolutely. So FAST started in 2020, and it's a collaboration between the Electronic Security Association and the Security Industry Association. Mm-hmm. And Merlin and Don got together and said, "Hey, we need an outlet for for the industry to really focus on the next generation of talent in the security industry. Doesn't matter what you're in the security industry, manufacturer, distributor, integrator, supplier, you name it, you're having a hard time finding the next generation of talent. It's just the way it is. And FAST is really focused on, and one of the reasons I loved being asked to join was at the time I was with Stanley Security and had been focused on talent acquisition. Specifically, that was an HR stint that I had. Yeah. And we, like everybody else, Stanley Security's big. Breaking news here over the last few months, Stanley Security is now part of Securitas, for those who may not know. That happened earlier this year. But at the time, I was focused on trying to bring in talent, and it is challenging, not just from the technician standpoint, but all the way through. So FAST is there to build awareness across, not just within the security industry, but in fact outside the security industry, and start to build a pipeline of talent coming in, and then also focused on not just job boards and job fairs on college campuses and technical school campuses and those kinds of things, which we're absolutely doing, but then also this education component where we want to keep people. Once people come into the security industry, we want to keep them there. So we've got this continuing education focus that we want to continue to build. So as the industry changes and goes through all the different things that happen in the industry, we want people to be up to speed with that so they can continue their careers and don't feel like they have to go outside the industry to advance.
Well, no, that's fantastic. I mean, I think that's kind of been, this isn't an issue that's exclusive to the security industry. I mean, you can see it across verticals all over the place. The workforce shortage, I mean, I think you hear it all over the place. Yeah. It's a real struggle these days. And so I think it's extremely important to be, investing time and energy to let young people know that, there is a viable option out there, not just for a job, but a full career. What are some ways that you think, you kind of mentioned the job board and education. Yeah. What are some educational programs that FAST is doing in order to provide that to it? Yeah. We're just getting started. But one of the main focus areas is going to be on technology. Technology continues to advance. It's funny, we have a really interesting industry, security, in that we're still servicing panels. We're asking technicians to service panels from the 1980s. It's true, yeah. And then at the same time, we're asking them to install video surveillance software that's got an AI engine that's running it. Mm-hmm. And so there's all that stuff in between. And so what we're trying to do is, we're uniquely positioned because of our support from ESA and SIA, where we can tap into some of that latest technologies with the manufacturers in the space. And we are, a lot of our manufacturing leaders in the industry are sponsors of FAST and sponsors of our events. And so mainly focus for now on technology so that people can stay up to date, whatever role that you're in, specifically around technology. But we're always looking to expand that and make sure that we're providing the right continuing education opportunities. Heck, I just actually, it's part of some consulting I'm doing, I put together a continuing education course specifically around sales. Okay. And kind of key areas around being successful, especially in consultative type selling. Okay. So, I see us expanding into that as well. So it's, this idea of bringing really good salespeople into the industry that perhaps are outside of it, but come from networking or come from IT, and so they have some of that, some of that knowledge that connects here in security, but then taking them through some continuing education specifically around consultative sales in security that helps them ramp up quicker, for example, and then ultimately moving into leadership roles. So having a track around leadership and what it means to manage an effective team and all those kinds of things. So it's not just technical, even though we're starting there. I see us expanding across the spectrum. That's fantastic. What are some ways that people, how can people contribute or get involved? If people want to give to this initiative.
I love it. We'll always take money because, money makes the world go around, and it helps us do all kinds of events that broaden the security industry's kind of horizon and reach. So for sure, money. In fact, the SIA Honors Night was a fundraiser for FAST, and it was very, very successful. So if you were there and contributed, thank you for that. Another way you can, soon coming out as we go into 2023, is going to be a compensation study survey.
Yes.
And so that's a great opportunity. A lot of times you get those in your email and you think to yourself, man, I do not have 45 minutes or whatever to do that. I'm too busy, which, hey, I don't doubt that. I mean, I'm the guy between jobs right now, so I got a little more time than probably most, but that's really where a place you can contribute with your time. Hey, lean into that. Give us, complete that survey for us, because we really want that to be as comprehensive as possible. So that compensation study is another part of what we're doing with FAST. We're providing information back into the industry. So leaders in the industry, whatever area you are in, you can make better decisions as you bring new people on, especially around compensation. Make sure it's competitive enough. Make sure it's in line with what other industries are doing and that kind of thing. So that's a great way to do it. We, at almost every large conference or trade show, we have a FAST cornhole tournament.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout for the cornhole tournament. We just had it at ISC West. Jeff Cole and the team did a great job putting that together. And it was, from what I can tell, it was a wild success. And then every year at ISC West, we have a golf outing fundraiser for FAST, and that'll be coming up in March timeframe of 2023. You can sign up now, get your foursome together now. That's another great way you can contribute. Of course, that involves money, because it always does, but that's a great way to connect, learn a little bit more about FAST, and contribute that way too.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love golfing with their friends and then also contributing to a great cause at the same time? It's completely guilt-free.
That's exactly right. And if you're anything like me, you're not a golfer, but you have clubs. So if you have clubs, then you can golf. So
exactly. That's all you need to golf is some clubs.
That's right.
Awesome. So I'm really excited to hear about the compensation study. Maybe we can do another episode around then and kind of go over some of the line items there next year. That would be really cool. Awesome. And I think that would be great. I'm trying to think what else that I wanted to kind of go over. One of the questions I tend to ask, we might have kind of covered it, but what do you think is the industry's biggest challenge? At least as of today, and what do you think ESA's or FAST's role is in that challenge?
Yeah, well, the easy answer there is finding good talent, for sure.
Right.
I think I would say, to me, the more nuanced answer to that is the security industry is not viewed as a high-tech type of industry, and it should be.
It's true.
It's viewed a little bit like... it's not viewed as a high-tech company or a high-tech type of industry, and it absolutely is with the technology that we deal with and the integrations that happen. That are pretty amazing. And so FAST is working to make sure that we, in our small way, change the perception of the security industry. It's very easy to say, SaaS companies, SaaS startup. Oh man, that's really cool, and all the really cool perks that come on with a software as a service startup. There's a million of those. Mm-hmm. But we have a lot of that. Any software as a service companies, we do a lot of that kind of thing in this industry. Now, not everybody does, but on that spectrum, we are right there, and most people don't view it as that. And so that's something that's, I would say, our biggest challenge going into the kind of the next decade here of the security industry is positioning it as a destination industry where you can be challenged, you can do some really interesting stuff, work with some incredibly cool cutting edge technology, and you can build a great career and do some really interesting things with your work. And so that's what that's part of our kind of big picture, bringing people along and solving that challenge. And in doing so, we're going to find a bunch of cool people, No,
that's exciting. Yeah, I think another factor in that too is somehow positioning the industry in a way that shows that it is integral. It is important. And like you were saying, it is it is an innovative front as well. Yes, there's that old technology, but there is ESA's big trade show, ESX, which we have every year, some of the tech that we get to see on the expo floor is unbelievable. I think we had like a robot from ADT a few years ago. The AI technology and video monitoring stuff is getting insane. And I think if we found a way to kind of get that out, I think that would pique younger people or any person, pique their interest to get involved. So it's kind of like a little bit of a rebrand in a way.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. It's because we've been around
for so long.
We don't go back hundreds of years, but we go back, kind of mid 20th century. You get that we're not on that high tech spectrum. It's like, oh, well, we started back in the early 2000s. And it's like, no, we've been around for a while. Yes, we have panels from the 70s and 80s that are still being serviced. But you're right. It's a rebranding that needs to happen, and FAST, at least in our small part, are going to try to keep doing that. Nice.
I know one thing that I hear a lot is, I hear from some people, is that there's a concern that maybe a lot of people nowadays just don't even want to work or have less motivation. I know there's this whole internet movement of the anti-work movement or stuff like that. Do you think that that's a legitimate concern, or do you think it is like maybe a lack of either maybe it's compensation on different industries' side? So the compensation study will maybe help us know if there's some issues on our end of making sure people are compensated fairly, and maybe that's the reason there's this mass exodus in the workforce, or is it like a lack of morale or something in just individuals?
Yeah, that is a great question.
That's a complicated question to throw at the end.
It's okay. It's complicated, and I obviously don't have a great answer. The first thing that came to mind, though, Hannah, is as a general rule, we as humans want to be inspired in our work. We want to be inspired. And I think there's not enough of that understanding in leadership of companies, even middle management, that a sales manager that's watching or listening to this, your people want to be inspired, and that's on you as a leader to inspire them. That's not on them. Now some people are just not going to want to work. I mean, we saw that all the way back in the founding of our country. Where that's why some of the early colonies were like, hey, you don't eat. If you don't work, you don't eat, kind of thing, because they're trying to figure that out. But so that's a thing that's happened for all of human history, more than likely, people not wanting to work. I agree with you. It seems to be more of a trend these days.
Right.
So the only solution I would have for that is be inspiring. If you're having a hard time getting people or keeping people in your company or on your team, think differently about how you're inspired. People want to be inspired, and so how are you inspiring them? And saying to them, what's your number, and telling them it's not good enough every month, that's not inspiring. Right. One of the things that I would always share, especially in the security industry with my teams, is what we do echoes in eternity. Meaning, and one of the ways I would say that is really challenge people. Hey, when we ask you to, in sales especially, to make that extra call, sometimes that extra call gets you in front of somebody who has a very specific need that you can meet. And the sooner that you meet that, the harder that target of their facility becomes. And perhaps you avert something really bad happening in that facility because you made that one more call. Because what we do in the security industry truly echoes in eternity. And so that it was a way to, my way of both inspiring, but then also sobering people to this realization that, hey, it's not janitorial supplies that we're selling here. And if it was, we'd be the best on the planet selling janitorial supplies. Okay. And no offense to anyone who sells janitorial supplies, very, very important.
Yes.
But I would draw the distinction between, hey, janitorial supplies is great, but providing security that may avert a catastrophe, that echoes for well beyond our lifetimes.
Right.
and allows people to come home to their families and children to come home to their families potentially where otherwise they wouldn't because you were there. And so that level of inspiration and finding that and tapping into that, I think will draw people because people want to work. And, you know, I believe God's put in our heart to work. But if you're not inspired, and it's easy, we've made it easy, at least in our society here the last couple of years, not to work, frankly, for some people not to work.
Right.
So connecting that inspiration piece, I think, is really important.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, something I kind of talk a lot about is I think we are living through a time where there is a crisis of meaning or inspiration is another term, where it seems like we've kind of, unfortunately, developed a nihilistic culture where not a lot of people seem to understand or see the point in anything, and therefore kind of jump to being cynical or nihilistic, or just this overwhelming feeling of being disenfranchised because they can't see the bigger picture. Yeah. And so I do think really it begins, like you're saying, with start with yourself. Find your why. I guess that's something that a lot of people have kind of discussed, is you need to find why you're doing something, why something is important to you, and if you're not doing it, you need to summon it or maybe go in a different direction. And with that, I mean, also finding, like we started in the beginning of this conversation, like maybe you need to step out of the box a little bit. Maybe you need to change. Maybe there's a book that you want to write. Maybe there's a podcast you want to start. Maybe there's a painting. Maybe it's a sport that you stopped doing because you became an adult and you didn't think that adults could do that sport anymore, but you still, think back in the glory days. And so, I don't know. It. I think you need to find a way to like stoke the fire within you. Always start with yourself, because that is the thing that I think those little steps, just like writing 30 minutes a day, if you start with yourself, other people will see what's happening and will eventually incrementally follow.
Man, that's so good. That's so deep. And the meaning, it really is. And we could have a whole conversation on that. I'd love to, actually, because that whole meaning in your work is so important. And reality is, you're not going to go, I have found there are days where you don't have that meaning. There's no perfect job, at least that I've found. But there's also value in the work. There's value in the struggle. There's value in the pressing ahead and not having all the answers and some of the unknowns. And that's why really great leadership that inspires people in those moments is so critical to that. But yeah, there is this nihilistic thing, like, what's the purpose?
Right.
Why even do it? And that's a dark place to be. There's no doubt. And we've got that cloud kind of hanging over the society more than maybe it's ever been. And so, that's it. That's a real interesting topic. Inspiring leadership doesn't solve it all. Yeah. But it has a really, really big impact on people's lives, being an inspiring leader.
Yeah. It starts somewhere. And I mean, if you think about it, historically, we've had so many amazing leaders. Martin Luther King Jr., Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. Those are a few like American people that come to mind, top of mind. Absolutely. And if you think about right now, 2022 going into 2023, I have a harder time personally thinking of those big leadership figures that we should probably have today. So I said crisis of meaning, a nihilistic culture. I also think that we're having a crisis of true leaders. Instead of people rising to become leaders, people are choosing to become influencers, which is different. And it's kind of a thing to maybe think about a little bit. Everyone wants to be an influencer, but no one is rising to the position of leader. Yeah. So that's, I don't know, an interesting thing to think about that I kind of meditate and throw around in my old head every once in a while. Like, why is this happening?
Amazing. A story. Can I share a story on that?
Yeah, go for it.
So you mentioned Abraham Lincoln. So 159 years ago, and now it's been, 159 years and 10 days. November 19th of 1863, he delivered the Gettysburg Address. and it ended up being 272 words.
Yeah.
I'm actually trying to memorize it just within the last couple weeks, just because I want. It's very inspiring, and I want to just have that I want to commit it to memory because it is so inspiring. An interesting story about that, if you read about it, there was I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but there was an orator of that time, very famous orator that got up and spoke for almost 3 hours before Abraham Lincoln got up. And Abraham Lincoln stood up, and I think they said it was less than 3 minutes, 272 words. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. And he goes on. The point what was so great, the story is, he got off the stage, and the guy who just spoke for 3 hours said effectively, I just poured my heart and soul into this thing for 3 hours, and I'm pretty sure the only thing people are going to remember is your speech. Because it was so inspiring, and it was so impactful. And even in that time, it was no big deal. It was only years later that it became, so influential and such a part of our kind of American history. Yeah. But anyway, to your point, we are missing that type of aspirational leadership. And I totally agree that we can be better than we are. We can specifically for Americans, we can be, we're the United States of America. We can do whatever we want to do if we come together. That aspirational leadership that's a great point. It's missing, and it's been missing for a while. So,
I appreciate that we've gotten a little bit into the philosophical here. I think people appreciate it. It's exactly the realm that I like to talk about. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, Paul. I think we're at about time. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we close out today?
Only thing is thank you. You can go to the advancing. I should have known this off the top of my head. I'm going to get in trouble. AdvancingSecurityTalent.org. AdvancingSecurityTalent.org. That's our FAST website. You can learn all about things that FAST is doing. You can also donate there as well, and then just be on the lookout for FAST opportunities, both golf outing, cornhole. You'll see us everywhere. You mentioned ESX. That's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky, my backyard here in 2023, and so all kinds of great stuff happening with FAST. So be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for the compensation survey. Don't forget, you can go to paulhevesy.com/author and pick up one of these bad boys for the holiday season. So
good holiday gift.
Yes, great holiday gift. Epic battle. The book ends with an epic battle on Christmas night between good and evil. So I look forward to being on this podcast again. We can talk about all kinds of stuff. This is great. Thank you. I
know, it was fantastic. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone who also listened and tuned in today on the podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We're on all podcasting platforms. The video version is available on YouTube. And if you're curious about how ESA membership can power your business and how you can get involved in FAST, make sure you visit our website, esaweb.org. Take some time to schedule a discovery call with our membership team. You'll be happy you did, and have a great day, Security Pros.